Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. After praising Allah and sending salat and salam upon His Messenger, amma ba'd. May Allah Ta'ala aid us, give us success. We arrive at lesson 43, ad-dars al-thalith wal-arba'un. Nouns as subjects of passive verbs and not pronouns. That's the next issue. In lesson 42, الدرس الثاني والأربعين نراجع قليلا باب المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله وهو الاسم المرفوع الذي لم يذكر معه فاعله فإن كان الفعل ماضيا ضم أوله وكسر ما قبل آخره Give me an example of that. Who got an example of that? فإن كان الفعل ماضيا ضم أوله وكسر ما قبل آخره. Give it to me, Ibrahim. Example. ضرب. Easy, right? No. So here, look what happened. ضم أوله. You didn't say ضرب, you said ضو. You put a ضم on the dot. ضو. And then كسر ما قبل آخره. The ba is the last. So what's before the ba is the ra. So you put ضو, you put a kasra on the second to last letter. ضرب. And so what's on the ba? It's a fatha. It's always a fatha because it's فعل ماضي. فعل ماضي مبني على الفتح. Always. So then وإن كان مضارعا ضم أوله وفتح ما قبل آخره. So then يا حنيف, you have an example of this? وإن كان مضارعا فعل مضارع that is مبني للمجهول. يذهب. Alright. يذهب به. Yeah, we'd have to add a bihi there because ذهب is فعل لازم. We didn't talk about that. But when the fi'l is lazim, really there's no place for us to do مبني لما لم يسمى فاعله because we need a fi'l, fa'il, and a maf'ulun bihi to move the maf'ulun bihi to the place of the fa'il. So if we just have a sentence like jalasa zaydun or dhahaba zaydun and there's no maf'ulun bihi, then there's nothing to move over and to take the place of the fa'il. So if I said to you dhahaba zaydun, how do you make this sentence into mabni lil majhul? ذهب زيد. Take your maf'ul and move it into the place of your fa'al. You don't have a maf'ul. So it's difficult, right? There is a way to do it with the jar and majroor. That's why I adjusted your example. You said يذهب. Yeah, so I said يذهب به. And فلان ذهب بما عنده. And يذهب به. So we might say here, هذا يذهب به إلى الأعلى. And take this pen, it is to be taken upstairs. يذهب به. Someone should take it and go with this upstairs, like that. يذهب به. So we added a jar and majroor. So like جلس زيد على الكرسي. How would we change that? جلس على الكرسي. جلس على الكرسي. We're not going to say جلس الكرسي. Exactly. Because the kursi wasn't a maf'ul in the first place. It's majroor because of the harfu jar. So you said يذهب. And it works for our cases here. يذهب به. That is what the author was referring to when he said وَإِنْ كَانَ مُضَارِعًا ضُمَّ أَوَّلُهُ وَفُتِحَ مَا قَبْلَ آخِرِهِ. That's about verbs. Notice that we're supposed to be talking about nouns, but he took a moment to explain how the verb is structured. How you change a verb from مبني للمعلوم, like ضَرَبَ, to مبني للمجهول, like ضُرِبَ. So he said you just take it and إن كان ماضيا ضم أوله وكسر ما قبل آخره ضرب. And if it's مضارعا ضم أوله يض وفتح ما قبل آخره. It's not يضرب, it's يضرب. Then the ba has a dhamma here. يضرب. But remember it's فعل مضارع, so it's going to be معرب. لم يضرب. It'll become a sukoon there because it's majzoom. لن يضرب. It will become mansub because of the nasib. Go back to our lessons on when the verb is changed to majzoom or mansub. All that is still part of al-bina lil-majhul. It doesn't go away from it. So now we're looking at lesson 43. الدرس الثالث والأربعون وهو على قسمين. What's هو? What is على قسمين? الفاعل or نائب الفاعل. Or المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله. Yeah, not الفاعل, but either what we're going to call نائب فاعل, the stand-in فاعل in passive structures, or المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله, we're going to call that the subject of the sentence in English, the subject of a passive sentence. That's why it says in the title there, nouns as subjects of passive verbs. So passive means it was done versus active voice. In English, called voice. You have tense, past tense, present tense, and you have voice, active voice, and passive voice. So active voice is I wrote the book. Passive voice is the book was written. You take the one who did it out, and you just say the thing was done. Not someone did the thing, but that thing was done. That's passive language. That's what we're talking about. We're taking the actor out and we're just keeping in the object, the maf'ul. So هو على قسمين. This whole concept of نائب فاعل, the subject of these sentences, is على قسمين ظاهر ومضمر. ظاهر and مضمر. Do you remember the fa'il itself? How many qisms for the fa'il? 2. And they were ظاهر and مضمر. And we finished our study of that in lessons 38, all the way back to 38. باب الفاعل. الفاعل هو الاسم المرفوع المذكور قبله فعله وهو على قسمين ظاهر ومضمر. So now we are in نائب الفاعل, or it's also called المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله, with longer language, and it is وهو على قسمين. It has 2 categories, ظاهر ومضمر. So today's lesson 43 is about المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله الظاهر, the one that is a noun. Here I mean by the word ظاهر, a noun. And in Arabic, the word ism for noun, it covers both nouns and pronouns. So when I say in English nouns, I mean al-ism ظاهر, like Zayd, like al-rajul. That's what I'm referring to when I say a noun in the title there. فَالظَّاهِرُ نَحْوُ قَوْلِكَ ضَرَبَ زَيْدٌ. Is that the right way to read that? ضَرَبَ زَيْدٌ? ضُرِبَ زَيْدٌ. Remember, we're talking about passive language. We're talking about مبني للمجهول. So ضُرِبَ زَيْدٌ. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. أحضر أخونا القهوة. So we say أحضرت القهوة. The coffee was brought. جزاك الله خيرا. طيب, so we have نحو قولك ضرب زيد. Don't forget, we're in مبني للمجهول. So not ضرب زيد. ضرب زيد. What's the next one? How do we pronounce that? ويضرب زيد. Or دن. ويضرب زيد. وأكرم عمرو. Thank you. وأكرم عمرو. وأكرم عمرو. Notice the difference between the first verb, ضرب, and the second verb, أكرم. What's the big difference between the 2 verbs, aside from the meanings?
There's a extra letter.
Extra letter. Okay, there you go. So one verb is ثلاثي. ضرب is ثلاثي. أكرم is رباعي. So he's giving you a little bit of the difference. Now this is going to carry over into خماسي and سداسي. So a couple of points here to keep in mind for those who were not there and you're listening to the recording. Number 1, these brothers did not have any tashkil, any dabt on their text. So, for example, look on the bottom of page 228, in the middle of the text that doesn't have any dabt. There it says, باب المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله. This is similar to the text that they were looking at the time of this class. Just so you know, the kind of struggle our brothers were facing at that time. And so read on there. وهو الاسم المرفوع الذي لم يذكر معه فاعله فإن كان الفعل ماضيا ضم أوله وكسر ما قبل آخره وإن كان مضارعا ضم أوله وفتح ما قبل آخره وهو على قسمين ظاهر ومضمر فالظاهر نحو قولك. A person might say ضرب زيد, but of course that doesn't make sense with the context, right? So they have to think as they read ضرب زيد ويضرب زيد وأكرم عمرو ويكرم عمرو, like that. So just so you understand why the dialogue went the way that it did. So that's firstly. Secondly, I mention here some sarf language associated with the science of morphology. I said thulathi and ruba'i and khumasi and sudasi. And what I meant is a 3-lettered verbal base, like daraba. That's called thulathi. You hear the word thalatha in thulathi, right? And then ruba'i has the word arba'a in there, which means 4. So it's a 4-letter base for the verb, like akrama. And in sarf, you can call that thulathi mazid, or you can call it ruba'i. In this context, I was calling it ruba'i, meaning a 4-lettered verb, akrama. And then you have a verb like ijtama'a, which is 5 letters, khamsa. And so that verb is called khumasi. That means a 5-lettered verb. And then you have istadhkara with 3 extra letters, 3 base letters and 3 extra letters, so it turns into a total of 6 letters. That's called sudasi. Sudasi, barakallahu fikum. That's just to help you along with some of these terms that were thrown out there that these brothers at this session understood because they had studied sarf with me and they had some background on those terms. And you may or may not have that same background, so I thought I would add that in here for clarity. Barakallahu fikum. Extra letter. Okay, there you go. So one verb is thulathi. Daraba is thulathi. Akrama is ruba'i. So he's giving you a little bit of the difference. Now this is going to carry over into khumasi and sudasi. Not just thulathi and ruba'i, but every verb, there's going to be a way to make it mabni lil majhul. So ضرب زيد ويضرب زيد وأكرم أمر ويكرم أمر. Look closely at that last example. يكرم أمر. What would the مبني للمعلوم be for يكرم زيد? Make Amr the mukrim. Make Amr the one who hosted him.
Who would say,
Put the fa'il back in the sentence. يكرم أمر زيدا. Or we actually have Amr as the thing who's mukram. So sorry, I don't mean to mix that up. Sorry. So yukrimu Zaydun Amran. We moved Amr over to be the na'ib al-fa'il, the maf'ul, alladhi lam yusamma fa'iluhu. So we said yukramu Amrun. طيب? But the original sentence was yukrimu. Look at the 2 verbs. Yukrimu is mabni lil-ma'lum.
No.
It's active voice. Yukramu is passive voice. Mabni lil-majhul. There's only one difference here. In the harakat. The ya in the beginning is still madmuma. It has a dhamma in both cases because it's ruba'i. Akrama yukrimu. Af'ala yuf'ilu. Adkhala yudkhilu. Akhraja yukhriju. Every verb that comes on this ruba'i scale with a hamza in the beginning is going to have a dhamma on its ya in its mudari'. Af'ala yuf'ilu if'alan. That's our sarf. That ties into our knowledge of sarf. So then, on the ruba'i scale, only one haraka really changes. It goes from yuf'ilu to yuf'alu. Yeah, yuf'ilu becomes yuf'alu. So the only thing that changes is the ayn al-kalima, the letter before the last. But notice, you can still apply the rule of Ibn Ajurrum here. You can still apply the rule. The rule is, ضُمَّ أَوَّلُهُ وَفُتِحَ مَا قَبْلَ آخِرِهِ. So yukrimu becomes yukramu, ضُمَّ أَوَّلُهُ. But it was already madmuma, so we didn't change anything. Baqiya madmuma. So, revisiting Duriba Zaydun. Make Amr the one who did it and put him back in the sentence. What do you say, Ya Hanif? Don't use passive voice. Duriba Amr. Change it back to active voice. Change it back to mabni lil-ma'lum. And make Amr the one who did it.
Daraba Amru Zaydan.
Nice. Daraba Amrun Zaydan. So Zaydan was the old maf'ul that we changed over into the new na'ib fa'il, the new maf'ul alladhi lam yusamma fa'iluhu. Go to the next example. Yudrabu Zaydun. Yudrabu Zaydun. Zayd is the madrub. He's the one who's being hit here. Put Amr in the sentence there, Ibrahim, and bring it back to mabni lil ma'lum.
يضرب عمرو زيدا.
Amrun, put a tanween on it, and also yadribu, put a kasr on the ra, for daraba yadribu. Yadribu Zaydun Amran. Amran was the old maf'ul. Now we're going to call it the maf'ul alladhi lam yusamma fa'iluhu, by getting rid of the fa'il. And so we're going to say yudrabu Amrun wa ya nafisu ukrima Amrun Let's bring Zayd back on this one.
أكرم زيد
أكرم زيد عمرا. Yeah, أكرم زيد عمرا or عمرا. So we're basically now just building the sentence back to the way it was to understand and be flexible. I want to add, for example, the khumasi or a different ruba'i. قاتل الجيش المفسدين. All right, قاتل حارب, like fighting. قاتل الجيش المفسدين. Take the jaysh out. Now this is specific for the scale fa'ala that has an alif after the fa. I want you to guess and just try to do it. What you're told is, because this is madi, make the first letter madmuma, put a dhamma in the beginning and a kasra before the end. So قاتل الجيش المفسدين, change the mufsidin to be marfu' in the place of the fa'il. المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله. Who can do it? Who wants to try? You want to try it? Jibril. قاتل الجيش المفسدين. قتل. Put a whole wow there. Because you can't put a qu and then an alif. قواتل. No. قتل. Alif is harfu lin. قتل. نعم. قتل. Not قتل. Because قتل takes out the harf illa. It makes it thulathi now. We went from a ruba'i verb into a thulathi. That's not the goal of changing voice here. We're not trying to change the structure of the verb. We're just trying to change the voice from active to passive. So قاتل الجيش المفسدين, we're going to say قتل المفسدون. We're going to make mufsidin like a fa'il, a na'ibu fa'il, that's going to be marfu'. Or مفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله مرفوع. So it was mansub before. It was the مفعول به. قاتل الجيش المفسدين, because it's mansub, مفعول به. Now it becomes مرفوع. المفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله. Remember, every ism we're looking at now is مرفوع for a while. So then قتل المفسدون. Another ruba'i that's different from that. كلم. كلم فاطمة الإمامة. كلم فاطمة or كلمت. كلمت فاطمة الإمامة. Take Fatima out. كلمة. كلمت. الإمامة. It's a female imam. Okay. You're in California. In the original sentence, the imam was a man. You changed the gender of the, which is outside of our scope here. Gender changing. This is America, but we're trying to keep gender the way it is in our examples. كلم الإمام. طيب, keep him a man. كلم الإمام. كلمت فاطمة الإمامة. Yeah, and I just pronounced the fatha on the mim, not to make it a ta marbuta, if that's what confused you. So كلمت فاطمة الإمام with a fatha on that mim. الإمام. So then you say كلم الإمام. The imam has been spoken to. With passive voice here, the imam was spoken to. That's another ruba'i. We have three ruba'is, right? We have akrama, we have kallama, and then we have qatala. Different ways of making the verb four-lettered. Kallama with a shadda, akrama with a hamza in the beginning, and fa'ala or qatala with an alif between the fa and the ain. That goes back to our sarf, essentially. That's a sarf skill. I don't want to immerse you guys into that. But essentially, changing every scale from active to passive is a sarf skill. We're just sort of reviewing it a little bit here because it connects, and we do need to know how to build the verbs from active to passive in every single scale that could come. So, khumasi, for example, تكلف الرجل النفقات. تكلف على نفسه النفقات. تكلف الرجل النفقات. So what do we say here? النفقات becomes the نائب فاعل or the مفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله. So we تكلفت النفقات. تكلفت. Another one that's common. توفى الله الرجل. Allah took his soul. توفى means to take the soul of someone. توفى. Yeah. So توفى الله العبد. So then you change it to توفي. توفي with a shadda on the fa. توفي. Yeah. العبد. So Allah, ism al-fa'il is mutawaffi. Allah is the mutawaffi. He's the one who takes the souls. And the one whose soul is taken is the mutawaffa. Big difference. The Arabs always make a mistake here. And they say, huwa mutawaffi sanat kada. Mutawaffi, he took the soul of somebody in that year. Not mutawaffa. Mutawaffa is his soul was taken that year. That's what's intended when someone misreads that. Mutawaffa, fulan ibn fulan, al-mutawaffa sanat kada. It means his soul was taken, the one who was taken in that year. That's passive language. That's the ism al-maf'ul. When you look at all of this, your na'ib fa'il or your maf'ul alladhi lam yusamma fa'iluhu can stand alone as an ism if you use the scale in sarf again, ism al-maf'ul for every one of them. So for example, daraba or duriba zaydun, let's make a jumla ismiya. Zayd is madrubun. Just bring the ism al-maf'ul. Zayd is not the darib. Amr is the darib. We took him out of the sentence. Duriba zaydun. Zaydun is madrub. If I just want to make a statement of fact with a mubtada and a khabar which is coming up, a regular ismiya sentence, Zaydun madrubun. Al-kitabu maqru'un. Or maktubun. Maktubun. Someone who's killed, he's maqtulun. Yeah, maqtulun. Someone who is the fighter, he's the ism al-fa'il from qatala. He's a muqatil. The one who is being fought, he's muqatal. All of this is sarf. It's not nahu. We're not supposed to be talking about this right now. Yeah? But it's needed to sort of tie all this together. Not always with the meme. On the thulathi, there's no meme. He's darib. There's a meme for the maf'ul, madrub. But there's no meme for the fa'il if it's thulathi. He's darib. He's qatil. He's qari. The thing is maqru' or madrub or maqtul or maktub. Well, if we go to aqra'a. All right, now what you want to ask is, what's the meaning of a muqri' then? And what's the difference between a muqri' and a qari'? Now your sarf and your nahu should be coming together here. The qari' is anybody who reads the Quran. And usually it's used to refer to someone who's good at reading the Quran. So we say, fulanun qari'un jayyidun. That's a good qari right there, right? The muqri', he's a master of qira'at. He's the one who tells the people, iqra'. Yuqri'uhum. He says, ta'al, iqra', iqra', iqra'. Kafa, like that. He tells them, read and stop and correct this and fix that. He's the muqri', yuqri'un nas. He makes the people read. He's not a reader himself. I mean, he is, of course, a qari himself. But he's beyond that. He's a muqri'. He's the one that makes the other people read for him. Clear? So the student is called a muqra'. Not really used like that, but that's what he is technically. He's a muqra'un. He's one who's been made to read. It was said to him, iqra', so he started reading. So he's muqra'. He's ma'mur. Amarahu, ustaduhu, so he's ma'mur from amara. And what's the fa'il called from amara? Strange one? Yeah, the amir. Yeah, not an ayn. Don't say amir, but it's amir. Hamza. Amir. From amara. The one who eats, akala, anything with a hamza in the beginning. The one who eats is called a akil. Akil. What's the thing that is eaten? Ma'kul. Ma'kulun. Yeah. An individual thing, put a ta marbuta on it, it's a ma'kulatun. A lot of them, hors d'oeuvres, ma'kulat. Or little tiny things that you grab and eat, they're ma'kulat. Yeah. Ma'kulat bahriya. You know what ma'kulat bahriya is? Seafood. مأكولات بحرية seafood مأكولات بحرية or مأكولات البحر نعم طيب that's all sarf. Everything I'm saying here is sarf, really outside of our scope here. Let me give you a couple more examples. استنكر الرجل المنكرات. First of all, before we even switch to passive, استنكر الرجل. استنكر, that means he saw it as being munkar. استنكر الرجل المنكرات. مفعول به, but it has a kasra on it. Why? Jem and the salam, the sign of it being mansub is a kasra. Niyabatan an al-fath. Nice. Barakallahu fiqh. A little bit of review. People lose that one, and you can't lose that one. So we got here, istankara ar-rajulu al-munkarat. Let's make it mabni. Lima lam yusamma fa'iluhu. What would you say, Hanif? Change istankara to mabni lil-majhul. Istankara changes to? Give it a try.
Ustankaru.
Say ustun.
Ustun.
Because you can't put us with tin. Yeah, it would be istankara. Ustun.
Ustun.
What's on the calf?
Kirat.
Ustunkirat. Ustunkirat al-munkarat. What's on the ta of al-munkarat? Ustunkirat al-munkarat.
T.
T? You sure? Remember where are we at in the book?
It has to be مرفوع.
It has to be marfu' because it's a na'ib fa'il. It's a maf'ul الذي لم يسمى فاعله. So you got to say it's marfu'. How do you make it marfu'? استنكرت المنكرات جمع مؤنث سالم مرفوع. How do you do it? جاءت المسلمات مرفوع. أيوة. نعم. So استنكرت المنكرات تو. نعم. Because it's مرفوع. علامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة. يستنكر المؤمنون الكفر. Ibrahim, you got it? يستنكر المؤمنون or المسلمون الكفر. Change the kufr from being maf'ul to being the maf'ul الذي لم يسمى فاعله and make it مرفوع. يستنكر. We're not changing it from being marfu' to mansub. Yeah, so keep the ra, the sign of the kalima being marfu' would be the dhamma on the ra. Yustankaru. Yustankaru. Nice. يستنكر المسلمون الكفر.
يستنكر الكفر.
الكفر. Nice. Yeah. يستنكر الكفر. Whenever there's no way for there to be a maf'ul ever, but what you do is you put it with a jar and majroor. استشهر الرجل في البلد. So then you make it connected to the في البلد. And you can say استشهر في البلد.
Okay, yeah.
And it means استشهر رجل في البلد, but you just take the fa'il out. استشهر في البلد. You know, people got famous in that city. You know, someone got famous. And then they're not named. And by the way, what you do with that is when you say, where's your na'ib al-fa'il? استشهر في البلد. You say, في البلد is jar majrur fi mahalli raf and na'ib fa'il. That's special.
Okay.
That comes, I was going to mention right after the adhan, jalasa zaydun. Let's change it to mabni lil majhul. Jalasa zaydun fil masjid. Julisa fil masjid. You got to make it tied to a jar and majrur. So then fil masjid becomes your jar majrur fi mahalli raf'in na'ibu fa'il. Second question.
Okay, so and when Allah says when it's a harf al-jar بعد الفعل. So Allah says نزل على محمد.
نزل على محمد بالتشديد.
How do we make it around with that?
There is a fa'il there that's just not mentioned. So it's for example, نزل الله القرآن على محمد. So then it's the Quran is mentioned already. So it's just يعود. It's a dhamir here is هو يعود على القرآن المذكور. Yeah, so you can say dhamir mustatir. And it's هو يعود على, every dhamir has an a'id. So يعود على القرآن. Somebody was going to make i'rab of يستنكر الكفر. يستنكر is فعل مضارع. يستنكر رو مرفوع علامة الضمة. أيوة. الكفر نائب فاعل with the language of Ibn Hajar مفعول لم يسمى فاعله. Same thing. Yeah. مرفوع علامة رفعه. طيب. Just a point about this issue that yes, there are reasons in creed that we say مفعول الذي لم يسمى فاعله and مبني لما لم يسمى فاعله with longer language. Like for example, خلقت السماء. You know, Allah is the one who created the heavens. So do we say that it's مبني المجهول? Referring, who's the majhul here? Allah? So for that reason they said لم يسمى فاعله. We know the fa'il is, it's just not mentioned in the sentence. We're going too far when we go down that line into the technical meanings of the words. When we say fa'il and marfu' and things like this, we don't mean raised up high for marfu'. So when I say وقال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر, وقال الشيطان, what's the i'rab of shaitan? وقال الشيطان فاعل مرفوع. Am I saying the shaitan is marfu'? So if you came to me and you said, see, why are you saying marfu'? You have to say it's mu'rab with a dhamma or something. You can't use the word marfu' because you're saying the shaitan قد رفع here. ترفعون الشيطان ثم تجرون رب العالمين. You said الحمد لله. Allah is majroor. You're leaving the technical meanings of majroor and marfu, and you're going back to the language and you're reaching. Why are you doing that? Why are you reaching back into the ma'ani al-lughawiyya? We're talking about mustalahat al-nahu here. So when we say something is marfu, we don't mean the idea of that thing is lofty at all. Get the idea? Yeah. So we say lu'ina shaytanu. Lu'ina shaytanu. Shaytan is marfu here. But the meaning of the passage is he's cursed. So how are we raising him? We're not raising him in meaning. We're making him as a na'ib fa'il. We're making it marfu in the sentence. So the word marfu, it means that which comes with a dhamma as an asl, or with a waw or an alif or thubutu noon, depending on what case it is in grammar. That's what we mean when we say marfu. We don't mean that which has an idea that's lofty in the hearts of the believers. Get the idea? The same with mansub. We're not talking about something that's stuck somewhere. Mansub means literally like planted in the ground. Mansub, like you put a spear in the ground or a stake. We don't mean that. We mean that which has a fatha on it. That's what we're talking about. So don't go outside of the nahu words and take us into, how can you say na'ib fa'il? You're saying Allah has a na'ib. No, we're saying this was the maf'ul from a sentence that was made marfu' by removing the fa'il. That's all we're saying. It's nahu. We're not using the word na'ib to mean representative of someone. Allah's representative is the sky or something. So when you're going away from these terms, it's sort of like you're insisting that the linguistic meanings are being intended, and that's just not what the nuhat, the scholars of nahu, mean when they say marfu'a and majroor and things like that. So I believe it's a bit of overthinking, but it's respected because, alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, it's respected because you can see the scholars throughout history have thought about creed and have tried to avoid language which could be problematic when mentioning Allah Ta'ala, and then perhaps someone outside of the nahu, the people who understand nahu, hear it, and you hear them talking about, the shaitan being marfu' or something, and an assumption is made. So from that angle, it has its basis. But it's a dangerous thing to really stick on people, that he said the shaitan is marfu', and to make that stick on someone as a point of criticism. It's reaching, Allah Ta'ala knows best. That's our lesson, number 43. The resources online, barakallahu feekum. Some of the examples that we mentioned today are on that resource. It's 10 questions, so make sure you get this one, inshallah. Last question, Ya Jibreel.
Regarding the na'ib fa'il, we mentioned 4 reasons why we use those, right?
Yeah.
Is there maybe another...
4 basic reasons. There's other ones. These are just basic ideas. Yeah. 4 very, very common.
We're looking at the verse, holy but the room, and it's like, how do you know who was the one that conquered?
There you go. Well, the important thing about it is our room is being conquered. Adam al-ihtimam bil-ghalib in غُلِبَتِ الروم. Otherwise Allah Ta'ala would tell us غَلَبَ فُلَانٌ or غَلَبَ البلد الفلاني الروم. والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا